Welcome to the InfoMullet YouTube channel. If you enjoy this content, please like or share. And if you'd like to support the InfoMullet by becoming a mulleteer, visit us on Patreon. We appreciate your support. Let's shift now from nationwide. In the US, one of these big questions is the state level. Should states be reopening? And I've been struggling to give good data to people. We've talked about test rates, we've talked about contact tracing, but the one data piece that was always missing is this R-OT number. So what is an R-OT number? It's R0 if it's writing down. R-OT is the amount of replication the virus has. And we've been using this since the very first articles we did on this, the mental models describing this R-OT value. And R1 means that for each person who's infected, one more person will become infected. So you can think about an R1, any value above R1 means that your virus is spreading to more people. Any value of below R1 means your virus is contained and it's sort of declining. If you think about an R value of 0.8, if I get infected, well, let's call it 0.5 because that math is easier and math's not my strong point. If I get infected and the R value is 0.5, I will only infect half another person. So it takes two infected people for each additional infection. And this is when an R value is below 1, you see that that's a declining number of cases. And a lot of countries are using R values. Germany calculates its R value every single day, and they're using that for policies. There hasn't been a good source of R values in the US, but I just found a website that went live. I did some due diligence on it to make sure that its numbers were legit, and I want to share it. It's actually linked in the sources, so you'll see it in the sources. But what it is this rt.live. And what it uses the same source of state level data that we do at the InfoMullet, the COVID-19 tracking project. And what it does is it's pretty bare bones, but it's pretty neat with its functionality. This chart here is showing the R value with a red line across 1, and it's showing where every state is with a range of confidence value, a confidence interval. And so at a snapshot, and you can see that as according to the data, right now the only states that are above an R value are Minnesota and Wyoming, and they're at R 1.0 and 1.02. And you can kind of scroll down and look at this. It also has some neat things where you can look at 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks ago, a lot of states. This is an outbreak, right? All the states, if you're above R1 in red, that's an outbreak. You're going to be expanding. And the amount you're above it, the higher you are above that number, the faster the outbreak is going to spread. And so 6 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, this is when the lockdowns were all in place, and Georgia was the first to reopen last week and latest. And now it's only using the data that we have available, so there's all the questions about testing and confidence and testing and things like that. But it also gives each state has an individual chart that you can click on a state, and I'm going to click to Georgia. So, and again, I love this website because you can really dig into each thing. And each state, when you hover over it, it adds when they put the shelter order, when they began reopening, and when shelter orders ended. So it gives you that useful reference point that a lot of charts are missing of when did we go into lockdown? When did we lift lockdown? You can see Florida here, Delaware, and you can also change it. So you can scroll around and see this, the value at any point in time, but you can also change it to see new cases. Now, R values is a replication value. New cases is the actual number of new cases, and they've got here again a 7-day moving average, which is the thick black line, and this kind of spiky in between, which is the the daily reporting. And I pick on Georgia because it's so easy to pick on. They've been screwing up their data every way you could possibly screw up. Like if you look at their death counts, it has 5 days in a row of high deaths and then 2 days of low deaths and 5 days of high. Well, I guess no deaths happen on the weekend because every Saturday and Sunday the death count in Georgia goes low. But you can see here, for example, that Georgia is still averaging 580 new cases a day. And it's kind of declining a little bit from its peak, but it's nowhere near done. And you can look at some of the outbreaks. So for example, Texas. Texas has been in the news recently. Scroll down here. You can see that its R value is 0.8. That's good. And you say, okay, its R value is low. That's good. But if you show new cases, look at this. Its new cases are gradually rising. This is why you want to look at multiple pieces of information. R value may say, well, it's low technically, but its new cases are rising. That tells you that there may be that R value is going to start increasing again. And you can look at like Washington. Washington did a really good job with their virus, and it remains low. and has low new cases. So Texas, again, these numbers on the right, their scales are different per state. Texas is getting about 1,000 new cases a day. Washington's only getting about 200. And you look at something like Wisconsin, where they're having a real struggle, and you can see that has spiked up a lot. This is after they did the primary. You can almost chart that primary where they went out and voted to this gradual increase. So what does this mean in terms of school reopenings? Everyone's asking me about school reopenings. And I understand why, because that's important for people who have kids. It's important as an indicator of trust in the economy. You know, there's a lot of fear about reopening schools. Well, one of the ways you can use this chart is we know now from the research that when schools are open, that adds about 0.3 to the R value, right? So you can, in some ways, you can think of the R value as certain things have an R value addition. Like maybe we could hypothetically say that bars, restaurants, salons have an R value of 0.25. If they're open, it adds 0.25. And you can look at these ones, anything that's above this 0.8 line, if you reopen the schools in these areas, you're going to push it, at least according to the research, above 1. Again, let's assume that all this data is accurate, all the testing is accurate. There's no problem with this data. The only decision is, should we open a school? And this is why this R value is really important, because you can say, if we open a school and if the R contribution of an open school is 0.3, then every single one of these that is above 0.7, which is going to be, so basically from Georgia to the right, if you open schools there, even as shoddy as the data is, you're going to push this potentially above R1. And this is why I've been saying that I don't think schools are going to open. I know people are advocating it. I know people are pushing for it. But every time, people have asked me a lot, because I've made this sort of wave 1.5 predictions. And they're asking me like, do you feel nervous because it hasn't manifested yet? Or are you uncomfortable that your prediction is wrong? No, I'm not, because these aren't exact sciences that says, if you do this thing, there will guaranteed be an outbreak. It's more like a probability. The more things you open, the more you add to that potential R value. Now, you may get lucky, but it's a factor over time. The more time you do this, the more chances you're taking, the more risk it's going to catch somewhere. So yeah, a state might be fine for 2 weeks. That doesn't mean it's going to be fine for 4 weeks. I'd love to be wrong on it, but I don't think we've got the confidence to say this is naturally going away. It goes away when, as Germany showed, when you have disciplined processes and procedures in the dance phase to manage this. We don't have that in a lot of states, which is why I'm sticking to my guns and saying, I'd love to be wrong, but I think we're heading to wave 1.5. Thanks for watching the video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to follow the InfoMullet, visit us on Facebook or Twitter. And if you'd like notifications when we post new video content, click on the red subscribe button below the video. If you've ever wanted to become a mulleteer and support the InfoMullet, visit us on Patreon. We appreciate the support.